Hi, everyone. This is Aaron Roy from Teachable. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very fun workshop starting in a few moments with Tami Macala. Before we get started, if anyone's this, and I already see folks in the comments, which is the best. But before we get started today, and I hand this over to Tami, I just want to make sure everything works technically. That way we have a really wonderful workshop. What I would love in the comments is, I see folks already saying where you're joining us from. It would be great to let us know, can you hear us? Can you see us? Do things look and sound okay? Actually, it'd be great to hear, is this your first time, or have you seen Tami before? Just let us know in the comments. And Tami, if you don't mind, say a few words before we really get started here.
Thank you again for having me here at this wonderful platform. I'm excited to share my passion, and working with new beginner mosaic artists is my favorite. So I love introducing this type of art to people. So if you are new and you've never ever experienced mosaic art, then this will be fun.
Nice. And I've actually had the pleasure of watching one of your workshops in the past. And this will be fun for me too. I mean, watching these, it's like downright therapeutic, and I could kind of watch you do this for hours. So like fall into the zone. I see folks can see us, they can hear us. It's awesome. Just so you know, Tami, where some of these folks are joining from, I see Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I see Tennessee. I see the UK. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Wow.
Yeah, Canberra, Australia, another evening one. Henderson, Nevada, Springfield, Missouri, Louisville, Ottawa, Texas, Southern California. We got folks joining from all over the place today.
Awesome.
Before I hand this over to you, just a few technical housekeeping things for anyone who may be joining us late. There will be a replay available for this workshop. So if at any point you need to hit pause, if you want to go back 30 seconds, because perhaps you want to rehear something that Tami says, feel free to do that. Also, if you're joining us late and you're watching this on fast forward to catch up, don't worry, we'll send out a replay after, and you can catch up with it then. Also, any links that Tami mentions today, we'll try to include at the end in any email we send after the workshop, and I'll also try to drop it in the chat. With that, Tami, I want to kick the floor to you. Some of these folks probably know you, but some of them don't. So, it'd be wonderful to start with some background. And I know today you're going to be going through at least a portion of the history of mosaic art. So if you want, whenever you're ready, you can share your presentation, and I'll pop backstage.
Okay, thank you again, Aaron, for having me here and being able to represent Mosaic Arts Online. And yeah, we're going to go over a little bit really quick history and just a few eye candy pictures of mosaic art and where it all comes from as an ancient art. And then I'll give you a little background about me and how I got started as a mosaic artist, because I think it's important to know that it is not some crazy business plan sort of adventure. It's actually just kind of from the hip, and it's worked out well over the last 20 years. And then I'm going to do the fastest 2-day workshop in 45 minutes possible, and just the Cliff Notes version, but some demonstrating of tools and materials and things just for getting started. If you're new to mosaic art, just give you really an intro and demonstrate how to make something, as I will do quickly in our fun hour together here. So yes, real quick, I'm going to just drop into a shared screen mode, hopefully. Let's see if I can pull this off.
I'm on standby to help.
Okay, I think I got it. Here we go. All right, so the history of mosaic art today, really quickly. So as if you don't know, mosaic art goes back to the Mesopotamian era. And it was the way that they could tell stories with seashells and stones and different things. And then as we moved into the Roman Empire, they were able to do more in Greece and Rome and most of Europe, obviously. And so these are just some of the pieces. Again, I don't want to go into real detail because I want to go have fun making some work, but I just wanted to say the art that I create goes way back. And some of these patterns you see here are so old. And this is actually some of the stuff that is at the Getty, or was at the Getty Museum in Malibu at the Villa. But these patterns are still inspiring people today to create contemporary mosaic art. So these are just two of the very old ones. And then here is St. Mark's Basilica in Venice, Italy, which I had the privilege of going to visit. And this is on the outside. So you can see how beautiful now the glass and the gold that they used as well to create more stories of the biblical times. And architecturally, these are obviously withstanding time, even though they do get restored. This is so beautiful to see. And this is the outside. And then this is a more detail on the outside, so you can see a little bit more closely, but that is so much gold. And just, I love how they were able to do the shading on the clothing, and there's expression. And this is so, this is between the 6th and 15th century. So this is so long ago. This is inside the St. Mark's in Venice. I went and studied at the Orsoni school in Venice, Italy. So got to see some of this stuff. So just a little more detailed shot. And that is literally it. So here's where I go back and get out of this and I share my screen somehow. Here we are. I'm going to stop sharing. And now it's just me. So that's just a really quick eye candy. And basically, I did not know much about mosaic art when I got started. And I was a costumer for movies and television for over 20 years. And when I was 23 years old, I started on a TV show called Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman with Jane Seymour. And while I was working on the show, one of my coworkers said to me one day, would you like to come over this weekend and make mosaics? He was really crafty and loved to make all kinds of stuff. And I was like, what's mosaics? And he said, well, come over and I'll show you this weekend. So I went over there and we just broke a bunch of tile and we glued it onto flower pots and picture frames and made some really, to my, sadness, bad mosaics, but it was the first time that I'd ever done it. And I was hooked from there. So I never stopped creating since 1996. And I would go on to do more mosaicing while I was a costumer. So I would come onto my shows, I'd be working at my trailer, and then I would actually bring small things like votives and anything I could to create and keep me sane, working 80-hour weeks and still enjoying creating mosaic art. And then in 2000, people started asking me, well, could you make me a mirror? Could you do this for me? And I'm like, well, that sounds kind of like a commission. And of course, I'd love to do that. So again, it was from the hip. It was really just experimenting and learning as much as I could from books. That's all we had back then were books. We had no videos. We had no kind of Facebook groups. We had no way to learn except experimentation and books. And that's basically how I taught myself. So I am a self-taught mosaic artist. I have obviously taken many workshops, but in the beginning, I was just self-taught. And the first workshop I did take was in 2004 from an artist named Laurel True. And when I went and took that workshop, it was architectural applications. And the important part about that workshop is that it really validated everything I already knew. I did learn some things, but I was already creating. I had already set up my company, which was called Create Arts Online. Oh, no, which was called All Cracked Up Mosaics. Woo. So I started All Cracked Up Mosaics, and by going to take that workshop, it really validated I was using a lot of the right materials that are so important for architectural especially. And it was really great. I was doing fireplaces, I was doing backsplashes, showers, lots of benches. I also did a lot of art fairs. I had to find ways to expose myself and get my business out there. So doing the weekend art fairs in different cities. I lived in Los Angeles at the time. And so it was really just about getting out there and people finding me and wanting to buy my art. And it just grew. I've never advertised my art. It's always been through either word of mouth, the art fairs. I did approach a lot of interior decorators and tile stores back then. So learning how to do the business side was really important as well, because again, we didn't have real advertising like you might see on social media now. So it was important as I was learning, though, that I was doing it with integrity. And that's the part I teach my beginners, the most important part, because a lot of people are going to spend their time and their money creating and they want it to last. And it's really important that it goes on the right materials to last. And so I feel very fortunate that starting out early and people taking a chance on me and trusting me, that I was using the right adhesives like Thin Set, which we'll go over today, and the right substrates. And back then it was Hardy Backer and things that really were going to stand the test of time, and installing them correctly was really, really important. And to this day, I have never been approached by any client to say that something has fallen apart. And so I feel very grateful that as time's gone on, that I was able to do these installations and that everyone is happy. In 2009, I decided I could teach. I didn't know what that meant. So I went and taught for free one weekend, materials only fee at a community center. And I enjoyed it. Obviously, I got a little extrovert in me. So I enjoyed the people. I got energy from it. And I loved sharing more and more about mosaic art that people could learn. And we did the basics. It was broken tiles, broken china, things like that, flower pots and stepping stones and things that were really good for just a beginner. And after that, it was obvious that I could do this. And so I opened the Santa Barbara School of Mosaic Art in my backyard. And it's still going now. It's a little slower right now with COVID, but that's okay. Because then as I was teaching, it became obvious that maybe we could reach more people, that, you know, it's nice when I can get 12 students in a studio, or I can bring in teachers from all over the world to teach at the Santa Barbara School of Mosaic Art, which maybe some of you have been to or taken a workshop at. But now it was time to like reach a wider audience. And so 2016, we launched Mosaic Arts Online, which is why I'm happy to be here today with Teachable. And that was just a really eye-opening thing. I knew about film, and so I have this background of how to work with some lighting, some cameras, but it was really more about relationships with the talent, which would then become our teachers here. So we have over 25 teachers, over 90 courses. And then in 2019, my husband was able to leave his job, and now he works full time with me. And without him, we wouldn't have quite the tech advances that we've had in being able to really produce some very high quality courses. So that's enough talking about me and the background of how from 1996 we got to today. But what I'm really excited about is I'm going to switch my camera now, and you guys are going to get an overhands perspective, which is how we shoot all of our courses at Mosaic Arts Online, and see just a little bit about the materials and things that I'm really comfortable with that I've used over the years. And it's really just the basics. It's so that you could walk out, you know, into your probably garage and your thrift shop and a few other things, and you could be creating tomorrow. And so I'm going to switch my camera, and then we will look at the stuff we have set up there. All right, so you can see here, I have got my easy frame. So what we're going to do here is, this is a lot of information in this screen. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over some things, but basically when you're creating mosaic art, the three most important things you need to think about is your materials, your tools, and what you're going to create on. And then the other important thing you are going to need is your adhesive. And we're going to go over a really quick demonstration of everything while I create in this frame. So what I'm going to do is, I know this is a lot going on here, but I'm going to back out a few things here, unpack a few things, and then we're going to go over the tools for how you use ceramic tile, the tools, how you cut stained glass, which was probably the most used material for most of my large scale mosaics and commissions. I'll introduce you to a few other things that I won't be using today, but just to give you some eye-opening. And then my favorite material that I like to work with are found objects. And so this is from out in the desert, and it's really weathered and old, as you can see. So I put a lot of found objects like this into my work, a really old jar cover, and so lid. And so I'm going to create a little something on this substrate, and we're going to go over what this substrate is, because it's a big, exciting product that many people might not know about, that's super easy to use. So we're going to work on something that I will create, but while I introduce you to a lot of these tools and materials. So, sorry, quick sip of water. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the stained glass and the china for right now. And what I'm going to show you is a demonstration on how to break ceramic tile. Ceramic tile can come in low or high fire. This is low fire. This is just a pretty orange color. And this is how I got started. I used to break it with a towel, and then you always want to turn it over so you break it on the not glazed side. But when I took that workshop in 2004, I learned about the heavy suede glove. So using a heavy suede glove in my non-dominant hand, I will take a tile like so, and these are called tack hammers, and they're really easy to use. You can hammer, that's fine too. And the other tool you're going to need are what we call side biter nippers, and these you can just find at your big box hardware stores. So using my glove to protect my hand, there's a little gap right there so it's not touching it. You're just going to smash the tile in the center, and you're going to get usually 4, sometimes 5 pieces, right? So then what I will do is I will break it again. So smashing it again, and this is not hurting my hand, but I just get it down to a size that I think is manageable. So these 3 pieces are pretty manageable, but it depends on the size of the piece you're working on. So since we're going to be working on this little 6x6 frame, you don't want to have big, maybe you do, but if you have big gargantuan pieces, you're really not going to be able to fit much interesting stuff in here. So once I've broken that tile down, I then come in with my side biter nippers because I want to be able to shape the tile the way I need it for my mosaic. The trick with using side biter nippers is you want to make sure that your nipper only goes 1/8 of an inch onto the tile. If you push it all the way on, it actually doesn't stress the tile as much. So you're going to go 1/8 of an inch right there. I put my fingers on either side, and using my hand at the bottom of the tool, I have a really strong right hand these days, and boom, you have now shaped the tile the way you want it. So you can do it again, and there you go. So that is ceramic tile. Now, what I have done here is I'm going to bring in this little piece here and show you that I have actually cut a few pieces already. And these are going to be used to do my demonstration of how to create in a little bit. But so you can see that I have more of these orange pieces here. But before we get into how to create, I want to do a demonstration of the stained glass, which is right here. So here is a beautiful piece of blue stained glass. There's a little one here, and then this is the larger one. This is called a brand that used to be called Spectrum. Now it's called Oceanside. It is the smoothest and easiest glass to cut, because it's just doesn't have any texture to it, cuts really easily, comes in beautiful colors. A lot of it's wispy like this. And like I said, I've used a lot of this for my creations in my large scale installations. So I'm going to push this little guy aside, and I'm going to bring in now the tools that it takes to create a stained glass mosaic. And that's these 3. So here we have the glass scorer or cutter, and that's this one. These are called running pliers, and then this is called a mosaic wheel nipper. And this is one of the most prized possession of most mosaic artists. This brand is called Lepinette, and like Erin said, I'll put these links onto the end of this presentation. So what I want to show you just is a really quick demonstration of how these 3 tools work. So using a glass scorer, they have oil inside them. It's a special oil that's in there. And you always want to make sure there's a little oil on the wheel, which you can see it's kind of coming off on my thumb a little bit. And that just makes the wheel move down the glass a little easier. So you're going to make sure that your hand is perpendicular, not leaning down, not too far up, perpendicular to your glass. And you're just going to push down and make sure you hear the score sound. And that is what you want to hear, and you want to see that little white line right there. These are called running pliers, and running pliers are what's going to split the glass. So stained glass is like liquid in a solid form. And what I've done is I have disrupted that solid form now. And using running pliers, you always want to make sure you have a black line on the top and not on the bottom, because this tool has a little bump right here, and it's going to split the glass exactly where I've asked it to with this score. This screw can make my spring go more tension or less, but you want to just make sure these are always touching when it's time. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure you line up your black line with your score line. Some people hold their glass at the end. You can, or you can just not hold it. It won't make a difference. One of the things about when you do break stained glass is that as you're making strips, it's good to start in the center of your piece. So I'll do another one here and then go again. So like I said, if you're going to get into mosaic art, then you want to probably try getting this type of glass first, just so you're not feeling defeated by other glass that may be more challenging to cut the way you're asking it to. So these are we're just making some really simple strips. Now I'll show you how you can make a little bit of a curve. Let's say you want to make some leaves or some wave patterns. So you want to make sure that your this line is always going in the direction of the way the score is going. And then your glass will split apart easily. So that is using those two tools. But now I want to make some squares. And you can always make squares with just going across with the scoring, or you can bring in your wheeled nippers. And these wheeled nippers, you want to always make sure that your glass is straight in the center, and it's in the center of the wheels. You don't want to be too low or too high, and you don't want it to be wonky like that. You want it to be straight, and you want to hold these again at the bottom of the tool. And you're just going to make sure when you do it, you snap down and you'll get a straight cut. If you're new to mosaic art, or maybe you've tried a few times and you're like, oh, every time I cut, I get a curve or it's not straight. It's because you're stressing the glass at the end of your strip. Put your nippers in the center and work back from there, and you'll see you'll always get a straight cut. So a lot of people come to us and say, how come I always get curves? And sometimes you want a curve, but sometimes you don't. So that is how you cut stained glass. So let's move on to the material that I use the most when I was first starting out as a mosaic artist, because this is the most accessible. You can go to your thrift shop, you can go to your consignment store, you can go on eBay, you can go into your cabinets and find your broken china and china that you want to break, china that has really cool patterns on it. That's what you want to work with. So this is something that's from like the 1960s, I think. It just doesn't have any. I love it when it has the prints on the bottom. Neither of these have any kind of writing on the bottom. So this one does. I always saved these, and I made entire mosaics of just the bottoms of teacups and saucers and things like that. So with the china, depending on its thickness, you will use different nippers. So these nippers, they don't close all the way, but you can either take the spring out, which some people do, but you can also grind these nubs down that are in between here. Like, do you see those black nubs where my fingers are? You grind those down and these wheels will touch. So depending how thin your product is, then you can get your wheels to completely touch. These go a lot farther apart, but that's okay because they're really good at cutting thicker material. So let me demonstrate. We'll get to, they're called montolets. I know I'm giving you guys a lot of information, but that's what the replay is for. You can watch it again. But I'm going to show you really quickly how to just cut this dish. And let's say I just kind of want to get a little bit of the flour. I don't always like to get like the perfect parts. You kind of want to artistically have certain parts of them. So you see the flour, and this stuff is so easy to cut. And now you've got just like an interesting piece that can go into a mosaic, and it's got history to it and all that. So we'll leave that there when we get to that part of the demonstration. A lot of people ask how to cut like half a cup. And if you don't own a tile saw, which is the way, or a ring saw, either one of those, that you can just cut straight across here and you end up with your little mug here, which is part of the inspiration of the beginner course piece, is this piece that does have a half a mug on its its flat side, so you can see down into there. So if you don't have that and you have a few cups to practice with, there are times, and I can't promise it's going to happen every time, but you can usually get them to cut close, and then you can either sort of trim this off a little bit to stay. Let's see if I'm getting this. Yeah, but we want to get some of the foot off too. There we go. So now, with a little bit of adhesive, I have a half a mug that could sit as a cool focal point into my piece. So that's one way that you can cut these mugs, but then sometimes people just like to use the handles in their mosaics. And we have lots of artists at Mosaic Arts Online that use different tessera, as we like to call our materials in mosaic. And this is either used like this, or you can take this off, or some people like to use the foot. I mean, there's so many different shapes that can come out of this, this one little teacup that has a bullfighter on it. And that's a whole other thing. You've got the pattern there that you could use for something else. So in demonstrating how to cut with these, I brought in a thicker, what's this from? Oh, 1981. So it's not that old, but it's probably been in some diner somewhere for a while. But what I'm going to show you is that the same exact nipper, same exact handle holding. These are longer. These are called leponettes. Like I said, they're more burly. They're just can cut thicker stuff, won't hurt your hands. And that is going to be easier to use these for this thickness than it would be for me to use these. Now, with this said, you don't want to use either of these on your ceramic tile, because these wheels will just be completely worn down. And when you watch the course, if you do the beginner course, you'll learn a lot more about how these tools can be used and how to adjust the wheels and different things like that. But I want to just introduce you to a couple more materials, and then I'm going to start demonstrating how to create on our small little substrate here. So this is another material you can go out in your backyard and find, and this is just sandstone. These are just rocks. You can create with that. And like I said, we have a couple courses at Mosaic Arts Online with a great teacher that does that. And this is Mexican smalty. So this is probably one of my favorite tessera to work with. And it comes from a small town in Mexico called Cuernavaca. It has been made by the same family for 5 generations, the Perdomo family. And they take the glass in its molten state and they pour it over a flat surface, and it's called a tortilla. And so then once it is flat, you can buy the tortillas as whole and cut them like you would like, or you can buy them chopped. And this is a mixed color called scarlet. You can buy them as just one color on the website at smalty.com, which will be another part of what we'll send you for the links, or you can buy a mix. So that's just something you can research on their website. But this is my favorite material. And if you see on my website, allcrackedupmosaics.com, you'll see some pieces that I have created with this material. So if the client is open to me using it, I will rush to use this one before anything else. It just makes me so happy. This is gold. So if you're not familiar with mosaic art, gold has always been used over the hundreds and hundreds of years to create mosaic art. So when I studied in Italy at Orsoni, they were making the gold. They take 2 weeks out for the furnaces to only create the glass that these gold leaf, little tiny thin gold leaf goes on top of. So they fuse the glass in these beautiful colors. You can see the turquoise, there's clear, and here's white gold. And they take once the glass is fused, they take the leaf and they put it over it, and then it's fused again. So this will never ever come off. It can chip if I try and cut it funny, but it's very expensive. So I don't, recommend it as a beginner. But if you really do start getting into mosaic art, I always put gold is in most of my pieces, just little flecks of it. It's in the mermaid, it's in the dolphin. And I really love this gold. And I brought this back from Orsoni a few years ago. So what I'd like to do now is somehow clear a little space here, because that's the other thing about mosaic art. It's very messy. And I'm going to bring in our little easy frame. And for those of you that are unaware or unfamiliar with easy frame, this will definitely be on. But this is a pre-made frame that comes with this. It's an aluminum frame that I can sort of turn over. And you can see it comes with this hanging hardware that you install with this substrate. So that's what it comes with, the hanging hardware, this substrate, and this aluminum frame. And then they give you the directions how to do the hanging hardware. It's very simple. What's great about these frames is you have instant art to hang, and people ask all the time, how do I frame my mosaics? How do I frame my mosaics? Well, if you get these frames and they come in many sizes, then you are good to go. They send it with this substrate that's called Go Board. You just got to be careful with Go Board because it has some fiberglass sort of texture to it that can give you a little rash. So I just recommend being really careful when you use it. And then they come with the flat, almost flush. These aren't the screws. These are kind of like the nuts but the washer is on the side. And so when we go to make our mosaic, we can cover them up. And so this I'm going to go over is a really simple demonstration in creating with a couple different adhesives, because I think adhesive is a really big question that people ask about with mosaic art. And I have a couple that I'm a big fan of. And one of them is this, and this is DAP Quick Seal. And this is actually a kitchen and bathroom caulking, believe it or not. But it is waterproof. It comes in white. It comes in a few colors because they want to match caulk in some things. And it also comes in clear. You really don't need this mold guard version. I just happened to find it with the clear, so I bought it. So this one, if you find this in the store, this is great. What I love about it is it's very viscous. So you'll see when I squirt it out, it has a real thickness to it, and I just love creating with it. And we're also going to show you, I'm going to show you a little bit about thin set as well. Those are my two favorite adhesives to use. So to get started, I think what I will do is, now that you've seen the demonstration of how to cut stained glass, I have pre-cut these little 4 pieces here, and I'm sort of doing a very quick demonstration of what's in the beginner online course. So if you decide to go forward with the online course that we're offering at the end of this presentation, this is the piece that you see made throughout the whole course. So it's a much longer version of what we're going to go over today, but I just thought I would do some kind of mini version of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these 4 off, and with mosaic art, you sometimes want to pre-cut stuff, especially when you have the short time we have. I'm going to use white for this because it's got this, you're putting it behind stained glass. And even though this stained glass is totally opaque, it's about the reflectivity that can still be behind it. So if it were clear, and sometimes my substrates aren't this light, so it doesn't matter as much if it were clear or white today, but when my substrates are dark or black, you want to have that white background behind it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spread a little bit along there. And this, I don't need to really use anything. I'm just going to jiggy it. And there is enough of the adhesive there to set it. And I'm giving a tiny gap here so that I can get some grout down in there, which we will not be grouting this piece today. So I guess this goes this way, yeah. So then I'll quickly do this one. We'll get that down. And then this one goes here. Get that jiggied in there. So some terminology in mosaic art is like, if you've never heard the word tessera, that is what we call our materials. And that means a piece or a stone of some kind in Italian. And then there's other words like ondimento, which we're not going to get into today, but you can learn a lot about that in our other courses here at Mosaic Arts Online. But if you are familiar with mosaic, we have lots of terminology in Italian. So next up, again, like I had done for the big piece I showed you, I have a focal point that I want to add. And this is like the super interesting, if you can see it, old piece of glass that's just been weathered and beat up that I found somewhere out in the desert. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in some thin set. And this is thin set or mortar. And I don't have time today to mix it for you, but I wanted to show you the consistency of it. And lots of mosaic artists use different food references for what consistency you want. So this is hummus, peanut butter. I think I've heard brownie batter, but that's what you want. You don't want it to fall off your applicator, whether it's a stick or a Italian spatula or whatever we're going to do. So now that I've demonstrated the DAP, which I'm just demonstrating both, there is no, I could have done all thin set or all DAP, but I really just wanted to give you guys as much of an eye opener to this sort of process and what I do in my studio. So this has a little transparency, you see that? So you don't want to have a clear adhesive that would go over that. So using this mortar, this is polymer fortified thin set with water. I'm going to what we call back butter my piece of tessera, my found object, and I'm going to get a really good layer on here. And we'll flip it over and give it a really good push. There we go. And yeah, there's like stuff squeezing out everywhere, right? And you'd be like, oh, that's bad. How do I clean that up? So I have this Italian spatula, but you can use pretty much, if I had another one of these here, you could use that. But you do want to clean up around, because let's say you're like, oh, it's dinner time, I'm leaving, I don't want to work anymore. And if you just leave that big white thing there is going to become a big hard rock, and it's going to be a mess to clean up, and it could sacrifice your piece. And the last thing I want to do is sacrifice this piece, because it is precious and there's no two like it. So I'm just cleaning up a little bit. I have a wet rag here. So it's better not to return it to your cup if you don't have to. Clean up. And now I can continue working. So in the, earlier today, I had processed what we call processing some materials. And what I'm going to show you is just a little more demonstration of how I create. And again, like I said, this is a little bit of an inspiration from the piece that is in the course. So I'm doing a little focal point in the center, which is, you can be or it can't be in your mosaic art, but in art elements, focal points are important. Other things that are important is balance, and balance can be actually the odd numbers. 3, 5, 7 is what a lot of artists like to do when they're creating, and I do too. So did you see that little dippy thing? That's because that screw is a little bit higher than the rest of the or that washer than the rest of the mosaic. So I'm going to add a little bit of a heavier layer of thin set, and that'll just gently push it down, and now we're good to go. So I'm like I said, I did a really good job of pre-cutting and setting this, but now it's a mess. So who cares? We're making a mosaic. And a lot of times there's a thing called dry laying. And when you go to apply your mosaic without the adhesive and you just dry lay it out, it'll be one shape. And then you'll go to lay it with the adhesive or thin set, and it won't be the same. It never, ever happens the same. And I'm not sure why. I would have to study that a little bit more, but it just doesn't happen. But so the other thing to think about is color when you're creating a mosaic. And so what I've done here is I'm kind of using the opposite sides of the color wheel, or what we call complementary colors, the blue and the orange. And it just makes for visually a really nice something to look at. So there's different things that you can really study about mosaic art once you get your hands going and get your first pieces created. And maybe in the chat, if you guys want, and I can see it after, is what have you created? If you are new to mosaic art, what kinds of things were your first pieces and how did you learn? And did you experiment? Did you get adventurous, or did you take an online course? Because Lord knows I didn't. Let's see here. The other thing when you're creating mosaic art is to think about the space between the pieces. And the space between the pieces is as important as the pieces themselves. And that's how we keep the continuity and making our pieces have really nice kind of, not flow is the right word, but just looks really nice. So if you're jamming a piece in there just because that's what you have, maybe it's not the right piece. Maybe it needs to be cut differently, or maybe you just need to look for something else. So don't feel like just because it's there, it's the right one. So as you can see, all of my lines are lining up in this sort of really nice kind of, they just have nice continuity to them. And that's really important when you're creating mosaic art, so that you can look at it and feel like it's, it gives you optical joy, I guess is the word that we use sometimes. And another fancy mosaic word is interstices. And that is the grout joints. That's another word for the grout joints, but we want to always make sure those stay consistent. All right, we're almost there. And then I think what I'll do is put some of this broken china around it. And that I decided I would show you guys on camera kind of how I cut it. And so this piece here, I don't like that little thing that's jabbing out there. So I'm gonna take my nippers. You always want to try and not nip your artwork, your pieces over your artwork. That's just not professional. And I'm not happy with this line here at all. So I'm going to take this out, and you can always like I said, you can try different pieces and see what works better. So this piece is too big right here, but if you lay it over a little bit, you can sort of see where I could, that's going to be too much. Oh, no, that actually worked. Okay, so we're going to glue adhere this one down, and then we'll come back and put this one in. All right, so now that the orange is down, I am going to give you guys a quick demonstration on grouting as well. So keep an eye on the time. I'm just going to do a few pieces here because we'll have some questions and answers in about 3 minutes. So as you can see, I'm going to come in now with my wheel nippers and start to add a little bit of china here. And you can see, so here's something to think about too. The level of this china is way lower than my tile. So what do? I've used all 3 different levels here, and this would get buried in my grout and it's going to be a mess. So we do a thing called floating. So taking this really nice consistency of thin set, we are going to add a really good layer of it, and you're just going to drop it in there, and we're not going to push down too hard. And it didn't come up to the full level of the tile, but I'm okay with that. This is my pick I've had since 1996. Got it from my dentist. You can see it's well used. And tools are really important in the mosaic world, as they are in most art world. So here, this is still a little lower than I actually like. So I'm going to pull it out and add even a little more. So floating is really important if you're working on a piece and you want to keep your tessera at the same level. And you're going to see it's going to look messy for a second, but we can clean it up. Working clean is really important too. So I keep my rag close by, and you can see the tops of my tiles have little to no thin set on them, and that's really important to me. I don't like to work messy. I don't want the extra work at the end, and it could sacrifice the piece if anything has to really dry or cure and then has to be cleaned up. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put this aside because this took a little longer than I thought, and I'd like to give you guys a quick demonstration on how I grout. So I'm going to bring in this quick little stained glass quilty piece I made yesterday. When you are grouting, you never want to grout the same day you created unless you're using a stuff called rapid set, which is like a rapid setting thin set. And a lot of people that make art, they're getting into it as a hobby, but you have to remember that when you create mosaic art, you're using materials that are used for construction grade as far as quantity and as far as materials. So don't be surprised when you want to go buy a bag of thin set and it's 50 pounds or 25 pounds. And we buy thin set that ranges anywhere from $13 to $60 a bag, depending on what we need. So that's another thing to consider, is if you're just getting started, using thin set is great. Mortar is another word for it, is really great to use. But you just have to remember you're using construction grade materials to create your hobby, your mosaics. The other thing about thin set is it has a 1-year shelf life. So you want to check the date on the bag when you buy it, because a year after that, it's not going to be good anymore. And we have to consider that as professionals. If you're making art for yourself, I'm not going to tell you that at 13 months, go throw your bag away. But I just think that's something to think about. If it's 2 years old, it's definitely not going to have the integrity it should. So this is now pre-mixed grout, and this is a medium color. And a lot of people ask what color they should grout their mosaics. And that is a big topic that is covered in the online course. So this is just a medium gray, and I'm just going to give you a really quick demo on how I grout. And I like to use tile sponges, and you want to make sure you wring out all of the grout. And so when you are using it, I'm going to actually just splat it onto, splat's a very technical word, but I'm going to taking this sponge, I'm going to, in small circular motions, spread it all in. And I'm going to put this here because it's about to become a big mess. Doing a mini version of this is probably more challenging than if it were big. But just wanted to really give you guys a quick demo of grouting and how using the circular motions really helps you get into those interstices. And when you're doing stained glass, it helps to like kind of drag the sponge along the edges. And you want to get off of it as much as you can of the grout off of the glass. And now coming in with my second sponge, I'm going to now do a swiping motion, and this has 6 sides to it. So if this was a larger mosaic, I want to make sure I only use 1 swipe per side. So we're going to swipe, and now I'm going to swipe on another part of the sponge, and now I'm going to swipe on another part of the sponge. And now you want to get to that level of cleaning off your mosaic just like that. Now, in a perfect world, I would say that we'd sit here and let this dry or cure and clean off our edges really good. But we're running into a little bit of time. And Erin, you probably want to come back and maybe there's some questions. And I can show this at the very end as it's been dried off.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Tami, I will say splat is a technical word. I was very impressed with that. And folks, I know that a few different questions have been in the chat. I'll try to grab in no particular order. And if I missed one, I apologize. Feel free to resend it and I'll bring it up. One that just actually came in was, how much adhesive should you apply? Let me bring that on screen.
How much adhesive should you apply? Enough that it can squeeze out a little bit from underneath your tessera, but if it starts squeezing out to the level of your tile, whether it is stained glass or ceramic tile, you're going to have a lot to clean up. And so it's always better to go a little on the less side than on the too much side, because the cleanup with too much adhesive can become really challenging.
Thank you so much for that, Tami. Again, another question I wanted to grab that I thought was super cool is Sarah would like to try Mosaic bowling ball. Mentioned weld bond. Any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, you know, I have never mosaiced a bowling ball. I know they were the big fad for a while. I have always created my own spheres with polystyrene and concrete, and those are going to last forever. Weld bond does not work outside. It is not meant for any kind of exterior mosaic. So if you do want to try the quick seal with a bowling ball, it's the fact that it's a slick surface is sometimes, some people say it's you can see on social media that they've lasted forever, and other people will tell you that theirs have fallen apart. And a lot of it has to do with the elements. If you live in a drier or, mild climate, you might be okay. If you are living in a freeze thaw, you're probably going to have issues with parts of it falling off.
Got it. Sarah, very cool emoji for your YouTube as well. Next question I wanted to grab is, speaking of DAP and exterior, do you want to comment on this?
Yes, it is great for outside. It is fine. It is a waterproof product, and there's other ones out there like GE silicone that is good too. One of our artists does her mosaic on stone course and her surfboard course using the GE silicone. Same kind of thing, that these are fine for exterior grade mosaics.
Got it. Oops, wrong question. The one I wanted to grab, and hello to that person I brought up. But the question is, when you were cutting glass, obviously you're eyeing a lot of things up. Why didn't you use a ruler?
You can use a ruler. And if you are going to use a ruler, you're always better off to use a ruler that has a cork back on it, because then it won't slide around on your glass as you're cutting. Plus it raises it up a tiny bit so that your wheel, this tiny little wheel, does not get stuck under the ruler, and sometimes will rip the ruler with trying to score the glass. But yeah, I just did a quick, demonstration. But yes, if I need to, I use a ruler, but I've been also cutting glass for 15 years. So.
Got it. Well, and Tami, before we get into the rest of the questions, and folks, we do have a few minutes left, so don't worry. I promise I see more questions coming in. I did want to take a second, and can you speak a bit more about your course, actually? Just because you are giving somewhat level of a promotion for the next few days as part of this workshop. Can you just give a quick mention of that, and we'll get into the rest of the questions?
Yeah, so Mosaic Arts Online, when we first started, did not have a beginner course, and it became very obvious that there needed to be some place for people to start. And so that is why we created this course, which teaches you a lot more in detail how to start from the beginning. And this is created on Weddy board, and we do the proper hanging hardware installation. So this goes a lot deeper into teaching how to cut the materials, how to use the different adhesives, grouting, using a focal point, talking about art elements, and things like that. So yes, we are offering a discount. And if you are new to mosaic art, or you only have looked in books, or you've tried just learning on social media, then this is a great deal and a great jumping off point to really, and all of our courses, once purchased, never expire. And we have payment plans and all that kind of stuff.
And thank you so much for that, Tammy, because I know you're giving $30 off. That's only for the next 7 days. Your course is not typically when you discount. So this is something you offered for our audience, and we did appreciate that. And for folks, I just put that link in the YouTube chat in case you are interested in checking out Tammy's course. It's also in the YouTube description, and we'll make sure it's in the email with some of the other links that Tammy mentioned during the workshop.
Yeah. For sure.
If you're ready, I got more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Let me grab this one. Do you ever do mosaic on glass, and is the clear quick seal good to use?
If you're going to do, I have never done it. I don't do glass on glass. And I know that we do have a great course here with precision cutting with stained glass that is all about glass on glass and the right adhesive to use. You can try, it will dry clear. Sometimes when you do glass on glass, you really have to make sure the air can get to the adhesive to cure. And sometimes that can be challenging. So I am not professional on glass, but there are a lot of other artists out there, and Jennifer Coons has a great course at MAO on that.
And I think someone in the comments actually even mentioned that as an answer for that one too. So thank you for that. More questions on DAP. In particular, is DAP good for a bird bath?
Yes. Yeah, definitely will hold up under water submersion. The thing you have to consider with water submersion is your grout. And I am a huge fan of epoxy grout, but that's like a whole other, sort of learning curve on that. But epoxy grout is very strong. It's meant for water submersion. And so if you are going to do that, and it's also good because it can be a little bit healthier for the birds because there's no cement that is can release itself kind of like cement grout can.
Next question regarding the frames, the round frames for doing a garden table. Any recommendations on where to go?
I don't. I had table frames made for me that were square over the years when we used to teach a tabletop class at the Santa Barbara school. But you can look in garden shops, you can go to thrift shops, all those kinds of things. And then it's just figuring out your substrate on top, because sometimes they can sit into the frame, but sometimes they sit on top. So you really have to consider your substrate and how that's going to work on top of a round garden table. But they're fun, they're beautiful. And you can look online. I mean, if you Google table frames, nowadays everything is online, and I'm not used to it because I never had it.
Another question is, what is the difference between Go board, Weddy board, and Hardy board?
That's a great question. So Go board and Weddy board are pretty much the same technology, that they're extruded foam with a cementitious mesh over them, or a cementitious sort of material over them. The Go board, like I said, they use a lot of fiberglass, unless they have changed it. But 4 years ago, we talked to them. They knew they needed to. I had cut a bunch of Go board and I got really bad rashes from the fiberglass on my arms. Weddy board is my go-to. I just love it because it's so rigid, and I create most of my substrates with it. Hardy board, or Hardy backer, is 90% cement with a 10% paper sort of material mulch kind of thing. And it is water resistant, versus Weddy and Go are waterproof. So that's something to consider. Hardy backer is the least expensive. It's harder to cut, but technology has moved, because these are all meant to be like the substrates for showers and countertops and things like that. Again, in the construction world that we are trying to manipulate and use for ourselves. And so that's the difference between them.
Rapid fire. You are just a wealth of resources. The next one, when does one use quick set versus thin set?
Well, that's a really good question. So if you're grouting and you don't want to make a big mess, you don't want to buy thin set, I'm a fan of the DAP Quick Seal, but it depends who you're talking to. If you start getting Kelly Knickerbocker, one of our teachers, involved, she'll be like all about the thin set mortar only, but she does not grout her pieces. If you are not going to grout, do not use the DAP Quick Seal, because you will see it in between your pieces and it can be a mess. So it's really, if you are doing something that's grouted, you could go that way, or you can use it. I do have some pieces that are made with Mexican Smalty that are not grouted, and we use the DAP Quick Seal, but you really have to be good about pushing your pieces really close together.
And we have time for one or two more questions. Let me just grab one of these here.
And I want to show really quickly the last part of the grouting now that it's kind of dried.
Do you want to show that first and we'll grab one of the last questions?
Sure, I'll show you. So I'm sorry, this will just be this way, but you can see how this has gotten a really like kind of, we call this a haze phase. So now I'm just going to take my, usually I would take a lint-free rag, but we didn't have one in the studio at the very minute I needed it, which is okay. So, but what I'm doing, so weird to do this on camera like this, but I just wanted to give you guys the full demonstration. And so now with the sand that is in the grout, we have this really pretty reflective stained glass grouted piece. So the sand can do a good job exfoliating off any little bits. And so there you go. That's the final part of the demonstration, but happy to answer a question or more.
We're running up to time. We'll grab one more. Let me,
sure.
Using costume jewelry in a piece.
Yeah, you absolutely can. You just want to, if you're going to grout, you probably want to tape it off so that it doesn't get a lot of grout in it. Again, another course, Salvaged Treasures by Caitlin Hepworth is another great course here at Mosaic Arts Online. And she does exactly that in one of the third section of that amazing online course. But yeah, you absolutely can. And again, you probably want to use some kind of viscous sort of adhesive to put it into your piece. But focal points like costume jewelry can be really fun.
Very cool. Well, before we sign off, I know we're already at time. I do want to say, for everyone who's been with us and watched this, very fun hour of a workshop, let's let Tami know in the comments we appreciated her giving this time. This was a wonderful thing. It was fun to watch and be a part of. Let us know in the comments. Let's thank Tami and let her know what you appreciated. Any last words of wisdom that you would share out, Tami, for these folks who are aspiring or current, mosaic artists?
100% just experiment. Try things out. Don't feel like we have all the answers because we usually don't. But I am happy to share everything I know. But I was raised as a mosaic artist, just experimenting with things. I had 48-inch mosaic table that was a commission that I made the wrong way on the wrong substrate that folded in half as I was taking it to grout it. So, it's all about, if I never had that experience and made that mistake and had that failure, which is such a huge part of learning and not a bad thing, then I never would have known what was wrong and how to do it right. So I am huge into skinning your knees and figuring it out and being a part of our community, which, Mosaic Arts Online is growing so much. And we're so thrilled that more and more people are finding mosaic art. It's a wonderful art to play with and learn.
And we appreciate you sharing the growing community with our audience, with this audience today.
Yeah.
Well, Tami, thank you again. That was wonderful. We're going to sign off in just a few seconds, folks. Like I said, any of the links that we discussed, we'll make sure we send out. If you enjoyed just watching this on today's channel, feel free to subscribe. Hopefully Tami comes back. We would love to host her again in the future. I love when she does these workshops. And with that, we're going to be signing off. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.